Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are interconnected. And if the Taliban succeed, Al-Qaeda comes back with them into Afghanistan, number one. And number two, if the Taliban succeed, it's a worldwide propaganda victory. And I can tell you, the thousands, tens of thousands of young Muslims will rally to the cause of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and increase the danger to our country and to the Netherlands and to our allies if that happens. I think it's clear that any weakening of the effort against the Taliban increases the danger to all of us. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, Amsterdam can just as easily be a target as New York or Washington, London or Madrid.
Richard Holbrooke seems very worried of the Afghan issue. For the moment, any solution to the bloody conflict that dominates this country is beyond his grasp. Support for our military presence there is crumbling, and Washington is struggling to convince its partners of their usefulness and necessity. What was the original objective again? What do we do if we stay? We invited 4 specialists to answer these questions, and we visited the Taliban for the occasion. Our first stop is Karuk. It's been the symbol of Afghan independence ever since a rebel leader died here in the 19th century. We are welcomed by the main religious leader of this region, who is also one of the most influential intellectuals in the country.
و در تعلیمات اسلامی هم ما داریم که مهمان به هر کس باید به او احترام بشه. اصلا ما مهمان به کسی میگیم که 2 مهمان داریم ما. یک مهمانی داریم که قبلا این بین ما او یک آشناییه و هدف از آمدن او یک زیارت و احترامی از ما و بس. یک مهمان دیگه داریم که با وجود ناآشنایی یک آدم غریب و مسافری میآید و جایی هم نداره و ما او شب به مهمان به او خدمت میکنیم. این کسانی که روی یک هدفی میآیند میگن اونا مهمان گفته نمیشند، اونا روی هدفن و هدفی دارن. این رمز موفقیت در صبر و استقامت، رمز موفقیت. اول آدم نابلد به چا میفته.
Today, more than 65,000 soldiers from 42 countries are on active duty in Afghanistan. Obama is about to send another 30,000 over. In 2001, these forces operated in and around Kabul. Now, 9 years later, they're all over the country hunting down the enemy, the Taliban.
Hey, no problem, man. It's always been fun. Look, the question is, what are we, the West, doing in Afghanistan? Why are we there? Are we there to show our support for NATO and be patted on the head by Obama? Are we there to bestow packages of human rights and democracy upon the poor Afghan people? Are we there as part of a huge, epic political story, which most of us don't even understand? These packages of human rights and boxes of democracy that we bring, it's very good of us, it's a very good idea, but when you live in the Middle East, as I have for 33 years almost, you find that these great ideas drain away into the tribal sands.
I think, you are there, depending on what day of the week we are. You will say you are there out of international solidarity, out of a human concern for the Afghan people, that you are there for your own security, because Afghanistan has been and may be again the source of terrorism. It is already also the source of drugs. The drugs that are sold in Europe all come from Afghanistan. So there are selfish reasons for you to be there, and there are less selfish reasons for you to be there. There is also, the geopolitical situation. Until perhaps 2001, people in your part of the world were thinking of Afghanistan as a faraway country, a small country, and if people want to kill one another, why not let them do it? It doesn't affect anybody. I think now everybody realizes that, globalization works in every possible way, not only for finance and Coca-Cola. The Americans mainly, frankly, were in Afghanistan for revenge. They were looking for the people who had attacked them, and they had no interest for Afghanistan. The Europeans were following the Americans. They had come there out of solidarity. I don't think anybody really took the time to understand what was happening in Afghanistan.
We are in Kabul to see Mullah Wakil Ahmed Mutawakkil, former foreign minister of the Taliban regime and right-hand man of Mullah Omar. The Americans imprisoned him for 18 months. Then he spent 3 years under house arrest. Interviews with this man are a rare occurrence.
در این شکل است که افغانستان جنگ‌های مختلف داشتن و جنگ‌های طولانی داشتن ولی فی الحال جنگ عجیب و غریب دارد که هر دو طرف افغان هستند ولی در پهلوی هر طرف افغان غیر افغان ها هم هستند. اگر ناتو میگه که ما ایساف هستیم یعنی حافظ صلح هستیم این تعریف نداره. حافظ صلح وقتی گفته میشه که دو طرف در جنگ باشه در یک کشور طرف حائل یا طرف منجی بیان هر دو طرف از جنگ خلاص کنن دور کنن او پرده شود بین دو طرف. فعلا اینا که آمدن دو پالوی یک طرف جای گرفتن طرف دیگران توپک برابر کردن یعنی با یک جنگیدن با یک طرف یعنی فعلا گفته نمیشه که اینا حافظ صلح هستن.
We now have 22 times as many military personnel in the Muslim world than the Crusaders had in the 12th century. You see, the real problem, to my mind, is this. We're trying to produce in Afghanistan this special democracy, this wonderful society that will be a glittering symbol of our ability to help the third world, as we used to call it, or development, or whatever. But when you come down to it, our efforts to open schools in these remote villages, which the Russians tried to do totally hopelessly, in vain. The schools were burned just like they are now. It's a bit like trying to persuade Oliver Cromwell or Henry VIII or the Duke of Alba, in your case, of the benefits of democracy or the rules of war. You know, I mean, Oliver Cromwell would chop your head off and get on with the war, wouldn't he? I think societies have to develop on their own. We can help them learn how to make modern bridges. They know how to build bridges. They've been doing it for centuries before we got there. But we can't. I think this goes throughout the Muslim world. We cannot go to the Muslim world always with our soldiers and our tanks and our Apache helicopters. It doesn't work. And we're always going there saying we're coming to produce a new freedom, we're going to help the... In 1842 we thought we were helping the barbarous Afghan people, and they thanked us by destroying an entire English army on the Kabul Gorge.
We travel on, leaving the big city and the main roads behind us. This is Taliban country. Driving around here without an invitation is extremely dangerous. We are guests here, so our safety is supposed to be guaranteed. Our guide arranged a meeting with the leader of this province. His basement contains state-of-the-art equipment for communicating with the Taliban up in the mountains. Our guide returns empty-handed. We have no permission to film.
The Taliban, I think nobody talked to them. And I think if we had talked to them, probably they wouldn't have come. And at any rate, the Americans wouldn't have allowed it. So their absence was something that we needed to remember, that the Taliban, who until then controlled 90 or 95% of the territory, were not there. We have got to be aware of that. But we had to accept that they couldn't be there. Yeah. But what we could have done is really ask ourselves some very basic questions. The Taliban have been routed and left the cities. They didn't surrender to anybody. They didn't sign any surrender document to anybody. So where were they? What were they thinking? What they were planning? We should have asked those questions immediately.
Traditionally, Herat is the most conservative town of all Afghanistan. Islamic rules determine all aspects of daily life here. Haj Moulawi Qudadad, connected to the Taliban government back in the mid-1990s, is still the head of all local religious leaders today.
نظر من است که طالبای من عرض کردم که طالبای افغانستان از افغانستان در این خاک حق دارن. اونا برای حق خود مبارزه میکنن. و او کسایی که خارجی ها در طالبان خارجی ها مداخله میکنن. اونا ما تایید نمیکنیم.
10 kilometers south of Herat, Qudadad established a Quranic school. Its pupils 1,700 youths between the ages of 7 and 23 are taught the Quran as well as English and maths. A new Taliban elite is cultivated here. We are invited into the staff room during the break. Suddenly, it is our turn to answer questions.
ما میشنویم یک گروهی به نام حامیان حقوق بشر. می کلمه بشر اطلاقی یا بر دزد میشه یا بر صاحب مال یا بر هر دو تا. بر تجاوزکار میشه یا بر مظلوم. ظالم بشر میگن یا مظلوم یا هر دو تا. همین کلمه رو من میخوام از شما بشنوم. پس حال ما میخوایم همین یک کلمه رو بگیم، همین که یک کسی بالای کسی تجاوز میکنه، همین تجاوزگر از نظر اسلام، از نظر عقل بشریت او ظالمه، او طرف دیگه مظلومه. همین بارها دیده شده، حتی به همین تازگی پریشب یک دختر 12 ساله سر از او تجاوز شده بود. دختر رو نشان میده که یعنی سر همین تجاوز شده، ستمگر پشت رو نشان میده، میگه آبرو از این حفظ شه. آیا من همین سوال دارم که همون کسی که بر یک دختر معصوم این تجاوز کرده، او آبرو داره، عزت داره، باید او رو به مردم نشان ندم که آبرو از او پایمال شه و این دختری که مظلوم قرار گرفته این نشان بدن. آیا همین عدالت در حقوق بشری همین چیز است؟
سال جلوتر بده. این خارجی که حال حقوق بشر بده 60 سال 60 سال عمر از این دیگه. به اونا از اسلام یاد گرفتن دیگه. با کمال تاسف که حال بی‌حیایی، بی‌عزتی، دزدی اینا حقوق بشر رو پابند. یک نفر میه، یک نفر ناحق میکشه، 4 تا طفل تیم همه یتیم میکنه، مال رو میبره. وقتی که اون میگیرم که اون جزا بدن، باز میگم حقوق بشر. آیا همین حقوق بشره؟ همون که کشته شد بشر نیست؟ اینا حقوق بشر نیست.
The Taliban tried to take the Afghans backwards to the 7th century. You know, they wanted to recreate the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, nobody can do that today. Taliban did not allow girls' schools, nor did they allow proper boys' schools. They only allowed religious schools for boys. And then teach the children this very narrow view of Islam. And teach the children about that suicide bombing is a good thing. And a lot of these madrasas are brainwashing the children. How can a boy of 14 know what he wants to do with his life? You know, and they're using hundreds of these children as suicide. Now, I mean, this is not the Taliban of 10 years ago. The Taliban 10 years ago in Afghanistan never used these tactics. You know, so this is the influence of Al-Qaeda. This is the influence of terrible ideas, people who have no love for common humanity. Today you see these Taliban attacks killing 100 civilians with one suicide bombing. You know, so I think, you know, there is real terror.
This is General Alizai, head of the Herat police force. Related to President Karzai, he is one of his confidants.
با صدها میل سالا مهمات با تونها پارسال دستگیر کردیم، با دایاک تسلیم کردیم. امسال هم پیشرفته ترین سلاحی که تنها در جنگ عراق و استعمال شده بودند، ما سلاح و مهمات مواد انفجاری ای را دستگیر کردیم که هنوز در افغانستان اولین بار بودند که داخل شده بودند. این پلیس ما تانست که را با وقت زمان دستگیر کنه. ما اینا بودند یک نوع موادی بودن که هر نوع زری در مقابل هر نوع زری که استعمال میکردی او را ذوب میکرد، از بین میبردن، تیر میشدن. تنها در 2005 یک دفعه در عراق استعمال شده بودن، دیگه نشده بودن. در مقابل قوای ناتو ائتلاف و حساب که اوجا بودن. دوستای همسایه ما بر ما توپ روان میکنن، ولی چون مجبور هستن از مجبوریت خود احتیاج محتاج است. امروز دنیا آمده با ما کمک میکنه در این راسته و با خود کمک میکنه، نه تنها با ما. اگر یا القاعده و تروریسم را در افغانستان مهار نکنه، در دروازه از هم ایستاد میشه.
The strategy has a fixed core goal to dismantle, destroy, defeat al-Qaeda. And then it has some policy objectives, including strengthening the Afghan government to take care of its own security, which will take time, sending in additional troops for a shortish period of time, but begin to withdraw some of those troops in what President Obama has called a responsible transition to Afghan security starting in July of 2011. Greatly strengthening the government of Afghanistan, in particular in its security field and also in our leading priority in the non-security field, which is agriculture. Helping Afghanistan rebuild its agricultural sector is vitally important here. And then there are a whole host of other goals that we have.
We didn't have a plan for Afghanistan. We still don't have a plan for Afghanistan. What is our plan for Afghanistan? First, we wanted democracy. Then the Taliban were beaten. We had this lovely man, Karzai, who was involved with negotiations with the Taliban for a pipeline of Unocal, but we've forgotten all that. We keep cutting the narrative off, you see. Then we were going to win the war against the Taliban because we didn't want Osama bin Laden to come back, because unfortunately we hadn't caught him. And then we have to keep fighting, and then Obama comes in. Well, we're not so much interested in democracy anymore. What we're interested in now is building some bridges, giving the people some security, and beating the Taliban. And if necessary, we'll go to Pakistan to beat them. This is insanity. This is insanity. It was not going to work.
We are introduced to Mullah Jalil, one-time diplomatic representative of Mullah Omar in Saudi Arabia.
اولی که علت نیروهای خارجی در افغانستان چی بود؟ یک. دوم، وقتی که اینها آوردن، آیا طالب ها اینا را آوردن یا جبهه مخالف طالب ها؟ وقتی که جبهه مخالف طالب ها آورده باشه، بناهن من فکر میکنم همو جنگ که قبلی یا افراد شکست خورده که اکثریتشان امروز در رأس قدرت و یا حاکمیت هستند، اونها را هم حکومت شکست خورده طالب ها بودن، امروز باز هم حاکم مردم افغانستان هستند. اگر نفهمن و اونها سر از قضیه فکر نکنن، هر روز اولادهایشان، جگرگوشه هایشان که از سرزمین‌های مختلف به عنوان نیروی صلح در افغانستان میآید و باعث از او میشه که تابوت‌هایشان باز مردهشان پس برگردانند به کشورشان که اظهار تأسف برای هموطنان اونها خواهد بود.
People saw ISAF at the beginning as a friendly force coming to help them, not aggressive, not coming to kill anybody, not coming to arrest anybody, to torture anybody, but coming to help them. And they loved them. Now, not only the Taliban, but more and more Afghans are wondering, who are these Western troops here? What are they doing? They are bombing our villages. They are breaking into our houses, roughing about our women and children. What is this? This is the Russians all over again. So I think, you need, exit strategy by all means. I think you need to tell the Afghans, look, this is what we are doing, this is why we are doing it, and we will be leaving. You tell the Afghans that you are after Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is not in Afghanistan anymore. So they are wondering, what are they saying? They don't know that Al-Qaeda has left Afghanistan the end of 2001? And they still say we are after Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is not there anymore.
I remember in 1980, in January, at the Bagram Air Base, which is now the main American air base in Afghanistan, going to a press conference which a Soviet general, a Soviet, not Russian, Soviet general in full uniform, announced to us all as journalists that there were only a remnants of terrorists left in the mountains, that the government had been stabilized, that we didn't want anything from Afghanistan, the Russian officer said. We're just here to help the government and bring stability and bring equality to women. That was a mainstay of the communist line in Afghanistan, and to make sure that people could live normal lives and lived in security. But there were only a few remnants of the terrorists, and then the war went on for another 8 years, right? And I was amazed when I went to a press conference at Bagram. Oh, we're now talking decades later, right?
30 years later.
Yeah, 30 years later. And there was an American general who said, there are just a few terrorist remnants up there in the hill, and we're bringing stability and security to the people of Kabul, and we're getting schools reopened. I sat there and I thought, I know what comes next. I know what comes next. And we're stabilizing the government. I said, I know the story. I know the story, you know. And this is the problem. You know, how many people dealing with that region now, I'm not promoting myself as having some special knowledge, but how many people now were ever there then?
We should not be confused with the Russians in the 1980s or the British in the 1840s and 50s or all sorts of other foreigners.
So the Dutch or the Western presence right now in Afghanistan is not occupation?
No, it is definitely not occupation. This is not an occupation in any way, shape, or form. We are there at the request of the overwhelming bulk of the Afghan people, and everybody knows that.
سه على ما اخو عقبه فهمتون خدام
بفهم انت بشاركوا بكم خالد ما زدناش
خالد
mamy do przodu
jedź,
dobra nie, zwolnij 100 metrów
بعضی خانه 18 نفر به حساب به 18 نفر زندگی میکرد. از 18 نفر یکی اینه 18 نفر که یکی همون لنگه. همین دو تا مونده که او با فرارود به حساب به پیش دومات خامونجا سرباز بوده ای هم به همین میدان به اینجا سرباز بوده. بسم الله الله اکبر. از 18 نفر همین 2 نفر مونده که دیگه هیچ او هم به فوق لنگ 6 تا اولادایی بوده یکی زنی بوده ای 7 تا به حساب 5 تا اولادا پیر مادر ازی بوده به حساب خوار اینجا به دیدن مادر فرار که اینا تمام همینجا 18 نفر شهید شده به همین خانه.
بالله على بالنا واش راكم تقراكم كيفكم واش وليت الحكومه وما غادي تتنقى وما كاين حتى حكومه حنا اللي نقوها بربي ان شاء الله نطلب ربي يبارك حتى معالجه مع لو بارلور اللي تسرق في الباتيمون اللي فوق لو بارلور واخا راك شايف فينا بالله هنا اللي رانا شقعنا وين باش نديرو جروب تاع واش نقعوا انا ولا قادرين تسرقوا وتبيعوا وعلى بالكم واش تشريو هيا الله يسهل هيا راكم في بالنا بصح هيا ما سمعتوش هيا طيح رجليكم هيا نضوا ما تشويش فيه
Não, na chuva não gosta. أنا قشطة وصغونا كأمين جزير كادم أمين جزير كادم فرقة بك عندم أمين جي قشطة زير كادم مويا زير كادم مويا سياسرا زير كادم غورة نية غورة نية أنا مسار موانا مشكي غورة أقامي بلمفورية أمين جزير كادم برارجو سياسرا بود كودكا بود نماساكا بود سنواما بود أولاد مها نغورة نماس خاصة نكاسي مية برسانية بلنفوري مثلا بأخير مثلا نيشنا
الله
نه خود شما فکر کنید که چی به درد ما چی میخوره برای چی میخوره
ما درخت و نداریم
ما نداریم کو انگور که ما بغضاره ما دیگه سوال نداریم ما خواهشمندیم تمام اینا خواهش میکنه میگم مردم افغان که هست همیشه وقت به احتیاجی و به گشنگی و خونگی و با گرمی زندگی کرده ما همون زندگی خود میکنیم اینا هم که مرده زنده شما نمیتونیم کردم نه هم زنده میشیم ما خواهش اول ما به حساب چیز اول ما شما صدای ما رو با جاینا برسونیم که همین 4 نفر جاسوس به نام جبار به نام رمان همین 4 نفر جاسوس ما میخواهیم 4 نفر جاسوس میخواهیم به قانون بسپاره که ما محکمه کنیم کل ورتا بدون نسون پورت که اما همین 4 نفر میخواهیم ما هیچ
محکمه 4 نفر جاسوس
این چیزاست که باز مردم ترجیح میده به طالبان اگر از طالبان باز مشکلات دارن ولی اینا دمی عین کاتگوری نمیدارن مثلا فکر میکنه که طالب در خانه ما نمیه طالب ما را بندی نمیکنه یا ما را نمیکشن
خب نمیدونی که برای چی است برای می است که بیاید مسلمانا را یک جاسوسی بیاید $200 بده یک جاسوس $200 بده به افغانستان 30 سال میشه که جنگ است دشمنی است میره بازو میگه این به حساب دشمن چیکار بیا بمبار کنه بیا اور بگیره بندی کنه دیگه خب ما چی ندیدیم
و دیگه شکی نیست که افغانا حساسیت داره به خارجی ها وقتی که اینا عملیات میکنن بمباران میکنن داخل خانه ها میرن یعنی اینا به حیث اشغالگر فکر میکنن از همین خاطر است که باید اینا برن
For the Afghans, justice means first and foremost not to be pushed around by people who have a gun. This is what it means. That is the first thing that it means for them. And this is what they need. That's the kind of justice they needed. If you manage to have that, then I think you have got to start building institutions. And in those institutions, there is absolutely no doubt that the rule of law is the most important.
Justice is the only way to help the people who live there, if we want that. And, you know, I think, and I talk to Afghans, I think they'd like some of our democracy and some of our supermarket human rights. Yeah. But above that, I think they want something else. They want freedom from us. And this we do not intend to give them.
All wars come to an end, but sometimes they take a long time. Afghanistan has had continuous war for over 30 years, and it is a very serious situation. I'm not going to talk about exit strategies. I'm going to talk about success strategies. And success means getting the Afghan police and army self-sufficient enough so that it will be able for us to have a responsible transition of security authority to the Afghans. And the key date for that will be July 2011.
Before we can drive into the mountains, former Taliban ambassador Jalil takes us to see his good friend Haj Sheikh Hungar, a legendary warrior in the struggle against the Soviets. At first he was optimistic about the presence of Western troops in his country, but he soon changed his mind.
کلی به دستم بود که به موتر خود دروازه موتر کلیر داخل کنم که انفجار صورت گرفت. انفجار که صورت گرفت من به یک حالت شدم که همین کمربندم هزاربندم به جون می بود دیگه لیسک بودم که هیچ چیز موجود نبود مثل گوسفندی که بپلونی. اگر اینا بگذارن که شریعت ما جاری باشه اینجا یک مجرم 20 نفر رو میکشه وقتی که به چنگال قانون میفته حقوق بشر میده که نزن این اشکنجه نده از این پرسان نکو آیا اینایی که کشته میشه تکه و پارچه میشه اینا بشر نیم خود اگر اینا حقوق بشر یعنی چی حقوق بشر ما قرآن داریم که همه چیز بزود خلاصه شده اینا نمیگذارن که چیزی که به قرآن عملی شه کسی میکشه باید قصاص شه کسی میکشه قصاص شه دوز به دست قد شه طبق قرآن وقتی که این کارا قانون قرآن جاری شه اختطاف هم گم میشه دزدی هم گم میشه ناامنی هم گم میشه.
One of the major problems that we face out there, but we don't realize it, is that Muslims ask themselves this question. We who have kept our faith, we are under the oppression of people who've lost their faith. I mean, we say the Western Islam, don't we? We don't say Christianity in Islam, because there aren't many Christians left. I see a few on Sundays going into churches, but there aren't many in the West. So this is the big irony for a Muslim, is this atheistical person, the infidel, comes along and offers you a new prenatal clinic or some packaged food. To a Muslim who truly believes in God, but the person who's making this offer does not believe in God, or if so, he believes in a nice, enlightened, post-Renaissance, liberal God who supports democracy. And this is an irony which is lost on us, but which is not lost on them. They understand exactly what's going on. And my theory is that militarily we must leave the Muslim world.
A message from the mountains. We are allowed to continue. Two men on motorcycles guide us through an endless maze. The men surrounding us want to take a good look first, to make certain of our intentions.
I was in favor in 2002 of reaching out to the Taliban, of telling the Taliban, this is your country, there is room for you if you want to come back. We have not done that. When they were weak, demoralized, scattered all over the place, I am convinced that that was a mistake and that we have lost an opportunity. Today it's a little bit more difficult. So I will, I say, to be very, very precise, what I say is that, the people who are in charge, the Afghan government, their international partners, have got to ask themselves this question. Do we talk to the Taliban now or don't we? And answer it honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Afghan government has been talking to the Taliban for some time. I think they should be backed by the Western powers, But as I said in the beginning, it has to also be done from a position of strength, which means that you have to win some battles, you have to have perhaps more troops there, you have to show your commitment and strength. I mean, Afghans are tough guys. They're not going to talk to you if they think that you're about to pull out. So, you know, if the Dutch announce that, you know, we're pulling out tomorrow, you know, or next year, the Taliban will say, well, they'll all pull out. So we just hang on for another couple of years and they'll all pull out, you know. So nothing can be achieved. You know, this region has been a base for Al-Qaeda. They ruled in Afghanistan with the Taliban for 8 years. They were able to train tens of thousands of people. They would like to recreate that area again, a liberated area where they can train and bring foreigners and Europeans and Dutch people and, you know, other Europeans to train them in explosives and send them back into Europe to create chaos and carry out terrorist attacks.
After weeks of traveling and waiting, at last we are allowed to talk to a commander in charge of a Taliban armed unit. We are his guests, but only on certain strict conditions. We arrive blindfolded at some undisclosed location somewhere in northern Afghanistan. Small groups of Taliban fighters surround us, spread out across the hills. This is a tactic in order to avoid Western missiles. For budgetary reasons, such missiles are only launched at groups of 5 men or more.
زه د 8 کاله کېږي چې په جهاد کې ولاړ یم چې په اول کال افغانستان ته راغلي دي امریکایان د هغه ورځې څخه زه د مولوي دغه سره د اپیز او دریم صاحب سره پر بولدک باندې جنګېدلم بیا د هغه ځای څخه دغسې راغلم چې سلسله مې تر دغه ځایه ملا نایب حکیمي دی زما نوم چې تر دغه انه پورې شاید دوی نور په اعلانونو کې اورېدلی مخکې د دې په بکوا کې وو بیا په مرغاو ته رالو بیا د مرغاو څخه بیا هغه و چې راغلي وو تر دغه ځایه دلته تقریبا دا 3 میاشتې 4 میاشتې کېږي چې پر دغه منطقه باندې موږ مسلطه سوي ګوره د افغانستان خلک موږ تعلیم بس دا یو قرآني تعلیم دی باره موږ دغه بس چې ولاړ سوي دا سلام په لاس کې راخیستې د نور نه موږ انجینر لرو چې موږ ته دغه راکړي موږ ته تعلیم راکړي یا موږ ته درس ووایي زموږ درس یو قرآني درس دی چې د الله پاک قرآن موږ ته فرمایلي موږ په هغه باندې ولاړ یو بس موږ خپل جهاد ته ادامه ورکړې نور موږ داسې میدان نه لرو چې خاص په موږ یو ځای باندې بس هلته تعلیم کوو یا دولت دلته احسان نه لري زموږ یو قوانین الهي دی چې زموږ شریعت نافذ محمدي موږ هر څوک چې هر تعدا وکړي هغه باندې تمدیدوو بس که دا و چې یو چا تعدا وکړه موږ د خدای کلام ورته فرمایلي و غله ته موږ دلته څه ورځې مخکې د چا لاسونه ورپرې کړه د غله لاس ورپرې کوو یا پښه ورپرې کوو چې د خدای قرآن فرمایلي د اسلام په خاطر باندې هغه رفتار موږ د چا سره کوو چې د خدای کلام فرمایلی
ستاسو خپل انډیوالان وچه
دلته د یو چا څخه موټرسایکل په زوره رااخیستی و بیا هلته زموږ انډیوالانو ګیر کړی و بیا مو راویستی بیا مولوي صاحب مولویانو په راټول کړی بیا شریعت یې پر وکړی او باره مو واستو
هغه ستاسو انډیوال هم
هو زموږ انډیوالان دي
The question now is how to get out of this mess. We are there now. How are you going to get out of this mess? Not to uphold some kind of sacrosanct principle that elections have got to do this, that, or the other. Let's sit down and say, what is the interest of the people of Afghanistan? What is needed to help the people of Afghanistan at this particular stage in their very, very tormented history?
بودن از او و نبودن از او تاثیر مثبت یا منفی بر جای نمیگذاره. یگانه چیزی که بر جای میگذاره فقط تبلیغات و حرف ها و صحبت های مختلفی به وجود میاره. بناهن نیروهای خارجی باید زیادتر سر خود افغان ها فکر کنن که نظام و حاکمیت به خود افغان ها بیشتر بدن.
ما اگر برای دیگه پس همو طالب همو حالت میمانه، به هیچ وجه خوبتر نیستن و نباید این مفکوره باشه. یا اول باید نمی آمدن، حالی که آمده باید تاخیر بپای.
اگر اینا برن ای به این معنی نیست که زود به زود جنگ شروع میشن. حالی فعلا یک جنگ خطرناک وجود داره. اینطور نیست که یک آرامش است. اگر اینا براین باز جنگ شروع میشه. بدبختانه پیش از خارج هم جنگ بود، در وقت خارج هم جنگ است، وقتی که اینا میرن بازم جنگ است که اگر صلح نشوه جلوگیری از این نشوه.
The American people still support the war, although there's been some growing concern about it. Why do they support it? Because they know that our own survival as a government that will not be attacked again depends on it, and we'll survive. I don't mean to suggest that our very survival is at stake, but I do want to underscore that our security is at stake.
دوی و جهان ته بس موږ دا پیغام دی چې باید دا ټول خلک چې هر یو څوک دی یعنی که ځان پر حقیقت باندې بولي د افغانستان په حال دی خپل ځان خبر کړي.
لکه څنګه
حقیقت چې د افغانستان باندې نن امریکا تعرض کړی یا د ناتو قواوې اوویشت دولت په افغانستان کې جنګیږي، یعنی یو بل څوک ولې نه رامخته کېږي چې دغه څه ګناه کړي چې ورسره جنګیږي، دا خپل په کور کې دي څه چې د کوره باسي که څنګه.